AITA for losing it when her family helped hide her affair? My name is Dylan. I'm 36, and I work as a claims adjuster for a regional insurance company in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. That means I spend most of my week listening to people explain how damage happened while trying to figure out what actually happened. It sounds boring when I say it like that. Sometimes it is boring. A lot of my life is roof estimates, fender benders, water heaters that just exploded out of nowhere, and people insisting the tree fell before the storm, not after. But the job trained me to notice small things. Receipts that don't match timelines. Stories that change by 10 minutes every time someone retells them. People who answer a simple question with too much detail because they're scared of the simple version. At the time this all happened, I was married to Paige. She was 34 and worked in event coordination for a hospital foundation, which meant her job sounded glamorous until you saw her eating pretzels over a seating chart at midnight while arguing with a printer. We had been together almost 8 years and married for 5. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom townhouse with a tiny back patio, a kitchen sink that clogged every other month, and a garage that mostly held Christmas decorations, old paint cans, and a treadmill Paige swore she was going to use once the weather got bad. I thought we were steady, not exciting in the movie sense, but steady in the way real life usually is. Costco runs, shared passwords, Sunday night laundry piles, arguments about whether the dishwasher was loaded like a normal person or like a raccoon with a grudge. I thought boring meant safe. I was wrong. And the part that still makes my stomach twist isn't that Paige was unfaithful. It is that her entire family helped her hide it, then invited me to Thanksgiving like I was the one embarrassing them. Paige's family was close in the way some American families call close, and everyone else calls in each other's business. Her mom, Linda, ran the family group chat like a homeowners association with emotional jurisdiction. Her dad, Gary, rarely spoke unless he was repeating something Linda had already decided. Paige's younger sister, Tessa, treated sarcasm like a second language. Aunt Marcy hosted every holiday because her dining room had, according to her, the good light, which apparently mattered when you were eating mashed potatoes. Then there was June, Paige's younger cousin. June was 24, quiet, and usually the one washing serving spoons while everyone else sat in the living room talking about how full they were. I liked June. She had a nervous kindness about her, like she was always waiting for someone to decide she had taken up too much space. For years, I thought Paige's family liked me. I fixed Marcy's garbage disposal one summer while everyone stood around offering advice and no one offered a flashlight. I helped Gary carry a washer upstairs, even though whoever designed that staircase should have been investigated by a federal agency. I once drove Tessa to urgent care after she hurt her hand opening a delivery box. I wasn't the golden son-in-law, but I was reliable. Useful at least. Then, about 6 months before Thanksgiving, Paige started acting like she was living 2 versions of her life. Nothing was obvious. That was the problem. She got protective over her phone. It was not in a dramatic way, but in a slightly too quick way. A screen flipped face down when I walked into the kitchen. A new passcode, because of work privacy. More late nights for hospital foundation events that somehow never had photos online. She started taking calls in the garage. That would have made sense if our garage had heat or chairs, or anything besides boxes labeled "Zmaz Random" in Linda's handwriting. She also started coming home smelling faintly like cedar smoke and expensive soap. Not perfume, not anything I could name. Just warm wood and that sharp, clean smell from hotels that charge too much for parking. Her office smelled like printer toner and microwaved soup, so that stuck with me. When I asked about it the first time, she was standing at the kitchen counter eating cold lo mein out of the carton. "You smell like a cabin," I said. She looked at me over the carton. "That's a weird thing to say. I just mean different. Like smoke. We had a donor thing with an outdoor fire pit." "Oh, I didn't see anything about that." She set the carton down. "Dylan, I'm exhausted. Can you not do this tonight?" "Do what?" "This." She waved her hand between us. "Make me prove where I've been." I remember feeling embarrassed, like I had been caught doing something ugly. So I backed off. That became the pattern. I would notice something small. I would ask in the most harmless voice I could manage. Paige would sigh like I had interrupted her while she was handling a severe crisis, and somehow the conversation would end with me apologizing for making her feel watched. The first Real crack happened on a Thursday in early November. Paige told me she was staying late at the hospital to help finalize donor seating charts for a gala. She left around 7 in black pants, ankle boots, and the gray wool coat she only wore when she wanted to look important but approachable. I made myself grilled cheese, burned one side, ate it anyway, and answered a few work emails at the kitchen table. Around 9:20, I went outside to take the trash to the curb. It was cold enough that the lid had that brittle snap when it closed. When I came back in, I saw a missed call from my dentist. That reminded me Paige had said she rescheduled my cleaning because she had the shared Google Calendar open. I checked the calendar to make sure I had the new time right. That was when I saw it. Under Paige's account, from 6:30 to 10 p.m., there was an event labeled M. Keys. That was it. No location. No note. Just M. Keys. I stared at it for a stupid amount of time, telling myself it was nothing. Maybe M meant Marcy. Maybe Keys meant house keys. Maybe I had become the paranoid husband Paige kept hinting I was. Then Paige texted me at 9:46. Still at the hospital. Don't wait up. Love you. There was a photo attached. It showed her desk, a coffee cup, and a stack of papers spread out under the fluorescent lights. At first, I felt guilty. There it was. Proof. She was at work. She had taken the extra step because she knew I was spiraling, and now I was sitting there like a suspicious fool zooming in on my own wife's desk. Then I zoomed in anyway. The coffee cup had a holiday sleeve from a little shop near Marcy's neighborhood, nowhere near the hospital. I knew the place because Marcy made a big deal about their peppermint latte every December. The stack of papers had a sticky note on top dated 2 weeks earlier. The picture was supposed to calm me down. Instead, it gave me my first timestamp. I didn't reply. I sat at the kitchen table in the glow of the microwave clock and felt something inside me go very still. When Paige came home, she was too cheerful. That is hard to explain unless you have lived with someone long enough to know they're real tired from their stage tired. She came through the door a little after 10:30, set her purse on the bench, kissed the top of my head, and said, "Long night. I'm going straight to bed." I looked up from my laptop. "How was the hospital?" She blinked once. "Fine. Busy. Dylan." Just my name. Flat. A warning. I closed the laptop. "I saw your calendar." Her face changed so quickly, it was almost impressive. Confusion first, then irritation, then hurt. "You're checking my calendar now?" "It's our shared calendar." "You know what I mean." "What is M. Keys?" She let out a dry laugh. "Marcy's keys. She needed me to pick up a spare set for Thanksgiving stuff." "At 6:30? She works weird hours." "Marcy is retired." Paige stared at me like I had slapped her. "You're keeping notes now? That's where we are." "I'm asking a question." "No, you're interrogating me because you've decided I'm doing something wrong." "I didn't decide anything." "Then why are you talking to me like I'm a suspect?" "That one landed because of my job." "She knew it would." I said. "Paige, you told me you were at the hospital." "I was at the hospital." "With coffee from Marcy's neighborhood?" She froze for half a second, then shook her head. "I stopped there before." "Is that allowed?" "Why didn't you just say that?" "Because normal people don't inventory coffee cups." By the end of it, I was standing in our kitchen at 11 at night apologizing for the way I had asked a question she never actually answered. The next morning, Linda called me. Not texted. Called. "Dylan, sweetheart," she said in that syrupy voice people use right before they tell you are the problem. "Paige told me you two had a rough night." I was in the driveway holding my travel mug while my car defrosted. "She told you that?" She was crying. Paige had not cried. Paige had gone upstairs, brushed her teeth, and fallen asleep within 10 minutes. Linda sighed. Marriage is hard, but accusing her when she's working herself sick is cruel. I asked about a calendar event. "You interrogated her." That was when I realized my marriage had witnesses I didn't invite. I said, "Linda, this is between Paige and me." "Of course it is. But when my daughter calls me sobbing because her husband made her feel unsafe in her own home, I'm going to care." Unsafe. That word sat in the cold air between my ear and the phone. "I never raised my voice," I said. "Sometimes it isn't volume, Dylan. It's energy." I looked at the frost on my windshield and wondered when my life had become a sentence Linda could workshop. Over the next 2 weeks, her family closed ranks. The family group chat had already started planning Thanksgiving at Aunt Marcy's. It was called Turkey Logistics because Linda believed every gathering needed a command center. Food assignments came in between little digs disguised as jokes. Linda, Paige, honey, bring rolls if it's not too much. You have enough stress. Marcy, I bought pies from the grocery store, but I'm putting them in glass dishes. Nobody tell my bridge group. Tessa, some people really think every late meeting is an episode of a true crime show. Gary, I can bring ice. June, I can come early to help set up. Tessa, June gets promoted to favorite cousin for not making things weird. Nobody said my name. They didn't have to. Marcy sent Paige a casserole because stress kills appetite. Gary texted me privately, which he almost never did. Be patient with her. She loves you. Don't let pride ruin your home. That message bothered me more than Tessa's jokes. It felt coached. It was like someone had handed Gary a line and told him to deliver it before halftime. They never said, stop looking. They said, stop hurting her. The next Friday, Paige said she was going to a movie with June. She told me while we were both folding laundry on the bed. I remember because I was matching socks, and she was folding my t-shirts wrong on purpose, which used to be a joke between us. June's had a rough week, Paige said. We're going to watch something dumb and order Thai. At her place? Yeah. I nodded. Tell her I said hi. She looked relieved that I hadn't asked anything else. That relief told me more than an argument would have. Around 8:15, Paige texted me a selfie from what looked like June's apartment couch. Paige had her hair up, June was beside her with an awkward smile, and there was a bowl of popcorn between them. Movie night. June says hi. I almost let it go. I wanted to let it go. But the next morning, when I went outside to grab the mail, I noticed Paige's car in the driveway had mud caked along the tires. Not city slush. Not parking lot grime. Thick reddish-brown mud with pine needles stuck in it. The family lake house had a dirt access road lined with pines. The selfie said apartment couch. The tires said dirt road. I stood there in my slippers, holding a grocery flyer, and felt my heartbeat move into my throat. I didn't storm back inside. I didn't wake Paige up. I took a photo of the tire, close enough to show the pine needles, and then I went inside and made coffee. That afternoon, I texted June. Hope you had fun with Paige last night. What movie did you watch? She didn't reply for 5 hours. At 6:48, my phone buzzed. Sorry, just saw this. We watched that new movie with a famous actress. I forget the name. I stared at the message. June was the only person in Paige's family who tracked movie releases like sports scores. She once spent 20 minutes explaining to me why a remake nobody had asked for was culturally lazy. That actress did not have a new movie out. June would have known that before the studio did. I replied, no worries. Paige said the same thing. She didn't text back. For 3 days, I lived like a man holding a glass that already had a crack in it. I went to work. I answered claims. I told a man in Allentown that no, his policy did not cover raccoon damage if the raccoon entered through a hole he had ignored for 6 months. I ate frozen pizza over the sink. Paige kissed my cheek and asked if I was still being weird. I said I was tired. Then, 3 days before Thanksgiving, I got a message from an unknown number. This is June. Please don't tell anyone I contacted you. I'm sorry. My hands went cold. I was at the office, sitting in a gray cubicle with a half-dead pothose plant and a stack of hail damage reports. I got up without saying anything, walked out to the parking lot, and sat in my car even though it was noon and I had nowhere to go. Another message came in. Paige wasn't with me that night. Linda made me take that picture before Paige left. She said it was just to calm you down because you were spiraling. I shouldn't have done it. I read it once. Then again, slower, because some part of me needed the words to rearrange into something less awful. They didn't. June kept typing. I have a voicemail. I saved it because I felt sick after. I didn't know what else to do. A file came through. I played it once through the phone speaker, then again through my car's Bluetooth because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Linda's voice filled the car. June, honey, listen. If Dylan asks, Paige stayed with you until morning. You girls watched a movie. She was upset. You made tea, whatever. Don't over-explain. Men like Dylan look for cracks. We are not giving him cracks. There was a pause. I could hear a kitchen drawer closing in the background, maybe silverware. Then Linda added, colder. And please remember who paid the deposit when your landlord was threatening eviction. I sat there with my mouth open. Not because I didn't believe it. I believed it because it fit too well. June sent another message. There's more. I dropped decorations at the lake house in October. I didn't know they were there. I took a picture of the garland boxes because Marcy wanted proof I brought the right ones. There in the door reflection, a photo appeared. At first, all I saw were cardboard boxes, plastic garland, and a sliding glass door reflecting the living room behind June. The lake house had an old stone fireplace and one of those plaid couches that looked itchy even from a distance. Then I zoomed in. In the reflection, Paige was standing near the fireplace in one of my old Penn State hoodies. Behind her was Evan, the Hospital Foundation's corporate partnerships guy. I had met him once at a fundraiser in September. He had firm handshakes, white teeth, and the kind of confidence that made every sentence sound rehearsed. In the reflection, his hand was on Paige's waist. The date stamp was October 14th, the day Paige told me she was helping Linda organize pantry shelves. The truth was hiding in a reflection nobody meant to take. I wanted to throw my phone across the parking lot. I wanted to drive straight to Paige's office, walk into the Hospital Foundation lobby, and turn my entire life upside down right under the donor wall. Instead, I saved everything to 3 different places. That sounds almost calm. It wasn't. My hands were shaking so badly, I sent one screenshot to myself twice and dropped my keys between the seats. But I had spent 12 years in claims work learning the same lesson over and over. The person who loses their temper first usually loses control of the room. I texted June. Thank you for telling me. I won't tell them you contacted me unless I have to. Are you safe? She wrote back. I'm scared, but I'm okay. I'm sorry. I sat there for a long time, looking through my windshield at the office building across the lot, where people were probably eating microwave leftovers and complaining about printer jams. The world had the nerve to look normal. Then I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Mira. She was 40, sharp without being cold, and had an office above a dentist in Bethlehem. I found her through a coworker who had once described his divorce as expensive but educational. Mira fit me in the next morning because I said the words cover up and shared accounts. I sat across from her with a folder, a legal pad, and the particular embarrassment of a man who had brought evidence but still felt like he needed permission to believe it. Mira listened without interrupting. She took notes. She asked practical questions. Dates, accounts, property, kids. We didn't have children, which suddenly felt like the only mercy in the room. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Do not confront her alone if you think she'll twist it." I was thinking about it. Don't. I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're behind people who had a head start. That sentence did more for me than sympathy would have. She continued, do not threaten anyone. Do not post anything. Make copies. Gather financial documents. Protect your accounts. If you have joint credit cards, we'll talk about what you can legally do. And if there is a family event where they plan to pressure you, don't attend unless you have a clear reason. I looked down at my hands. They invited me to Thanksgiving. Why? To make peace, apparently. Mira watched me for a second. What does that mean? Linda's been texting me all week. I showed her. Linda, Thanksgiving is about grace. Linda, Paige needs to feel safe around family. Linda, a public apology might help her trust you again. Mira read that one twice. Then she said, no, they invited you to create witnesses. That landed hard. Because suddenly the whole thing made sense. They didn't invite me to Thanksgiving to make peace. They invited me to make me perform forgiveness. Linda wanted me surrounded by 20 relatives, 2 folding tables, supermarket pies transferred into glass dishes, and kids too young to understand why the adults were tense. She wanted me pinned down by tradition. She wanted me to apologize to Paige for suspecting the betrayal they were helping her hide. That was when I stopped feeling heartbroken and started feeling insulted. So I went. But I didn't go to apologize. Thanksgiving at Aunt Marcy's house looked exactly the way it always did, which somehow made it worse. The house smelled like turkey, cinnamon candles, and wet wool coats. The football game murmured from the living room TV, low enough that no one was watching, but loud enough that Gary could pretend to. Coats were piled on the guest bed. The kids had a folding table near the sliding doors, where one nephew was already building a fort out of napkins. In the kitchen, Marcy was scraping a store-bought pumpkin pie into a glass dish and smoothing the top like she had personally harvested the pumpkins. You saw nothing, she told me when I walked in. Wouldn't dream of it, I said. She laughed too loudly, then looked away. Paige came over from the hallway. She was wearing a cream sweater and gold earrings I had bought her for our anniversary 2 years earlier. She looked relieved when she saw me. Not guilty. Relieved. That hurt more than I expected. It felt like my presence meant the plan was working. She hugged me in front of everyone and whispered, "Thank you for coming." I said, "Wouldn't miss it." Her arms tightened for half a second, and then she pulled away. Linda watched me from the kitchen island with the sharp little smile of someone waiting for a performance she had directed. She wore a cranberry-colored blouse and had one hand wrapped around a wine glass like she was posing for a holiday catalog called Women Who Know Best. "Dylan," she said warmly, "I'm glad you're here." "I bet." Her smile flickered, then came back. "Family matters." "Sure does." Tessa was sitting on the arm of the couch, scrolling her phone. "Wow, he speaks." I looked at her. "Happy Thanksgiving, Tessa." "Careful." That almost sounded sincere. "Yours too." June was at the end of the kitchen counter, peeling foil off a tray of rolls. She didn't look at me right away. When she finally did, her face was pale, but she gave the smallest nod. That nod kept me grounded. Dinner started normally. Too normally. People passed rolls. Gary oversalted his potatoes and pretended not to notice. Someone complimented the stuffing, and Linda said it was an old family recipe, even though everyone knew it had come from a bag with a seasoning packet. The kids argued about who got the turkey leg. Tessa made a joke about men who think cranberry sauce is a personality. I laughed at the right time. Paige kept touching my arm under the table like we were okay. Every ordinary detail felt like an exhibit. The Bluetooth speaker sat on the buffet behind Linda. It was the same little black speaker Marcy used for Christmas jazz and cooking podcasts. I knew it paired easily because I had fixed it for her last year after she insisted the Bluetooth just fell out. I had the voicemail ready. I had the photo ready. I had copies in a folder tucked on the empty chair beside me under my coat. Myra's voice was in my head. "Don't threaten. Don't improvise if you don't have to. Stick to what you can prove." Before dessert, Linda tapped her glass with a spoon. It was delicate. Performative. It was exactly what I had been waiting for. "I hope no one minds," she said, smiling around the table. "But before we have pie, I think it would be beautiful if everyone shared one thing they're grateful for. This family has been through some tension lately, and grace matters." There it was. Aunt Marcy stared at her plate. Gary took a long drink of water. Paige looked down, and Tessa's mouth twitched like she was trying not to smile. One by one, people said the usual things. Health, family, new jobs, safe travels. The kids said pie and got a laugh. June said she was grateful for her new apartment application getting approved, which made Linda's face tighten for just a second. Then Linda looked at me. "Dylan." The table went quiet. I wiped my hands on my napkin and stood. "I'm grateful for documentation," I said. Nobody laughed. I kept my voice even because if I let it shake, Linda would use that. If I yelled, they would make this about my yelling. So I spoke the way I did when a claim had gone sideways and everyone was pretending the hole in the roof had appeared by magic. "I'm grateful for shared calendars, time-stamped photos, voicemail files, and people who finally get tired of being used." Paige's head snapped up. Linda's smile vanished. "Excuse me." I walked to the buffet, set my phone beside the Bluetooth speaker, and connected it. The tiny chime sounded too cheerful for the room. Paige whispered, "Dylan, don't." That was the first honest thing she had said all night. I pressed play. Linda's voice filled the dining room. "June, honey, listen. If Dylan asks, Paige stayed with you until morning. You girls watched a movie. She was upset. You made tea, whatever. Don't over-explain. Men like Dylan look for cracks. We are not giving him cracks." The room went dead. Not quiet. Dead. Fork stopped. Someone's kid whispered, "Mom," and got shushed. In the living room, the football announcer kept talking about third down like he wasn't narrating the background of my divorce. The voicemail continued. "And please remember who paid the deposit when your landlord was threatening eviction." I stopped it there. Linda's face went gray, then red. "That is private," she snapped. I almost laughed. "Private? That's the word you're going with." Paige stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "You recorded my mother?" "No. June did. After your mother threatened her housing deposit." All eyes moved to June, sitting at the far end of the table with both hands in her lap. Linda pointed at her. "You ungrateful little." "Finish that sentence," I said, "and I'll play the second file." There was no second file. But Linda didn't know that. For once, she stopped talking. Gary finally found his voice. Let's just all calm down. This isn't the place. I looked at him. Gary, this is exactly the place your wife chose. He flinched. Tessa leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. Wow. Are we doing court exhibits before pie now? Only the relevant ones. I opened the lake house photo and turned my phone so Paige could see it first. Her face changed in a way I will never forget. Not shame. Calculation. She looked at the reflection, then at me, then at the room, like she was measuring which lie still had enough oxygen to survive. I passed the phone to Gary. This was October 14th, I said. The day Paige told me she was helping Linda organize pantry shelves. That's Evan in the reflection. Before anyone insults me by pretending not to know who Evan is, he is the man Paige introduced to half this family at the hospital fundraiser in September. Aunt Marcy covered her mouth. Not because she was shocked. She covered it because she knew enough to understand what was coming. I looked at her. Your lake house. Marcy's eyes filled with tears. Dylan, please. Your lake house. She didn't answer. That's what I thought. Paige said, it wasn't like that. I turned to her. It was exactly like that. That is the problem with photos. They don't care how you plan to describe them. Linda put her wine glass down. This is a family holiday. You came here to humiliate my daughter. No, I said. You invited me here to humiliate me. I came prepared. Then I pulled the folder from the empty chair beside me. The room shifted. It wasn't a dramatic gasp. It was smaller than that. A collective tightening. People realizing that what they had dismissed as my suspicion had arrived with paper clips. Inside were copies. Bank statements showing Paige had used our joint account for 2 event supply charges at a restaurant 20 miles from the hospital. A screenshot of Evan's public payment app note to Paige with a leaf emoji and the word again. Photos of Paige's tires with the lake house mud and pine needles. The calendar event labeled M. Keys. June's statement, signed and dated, because Mira had told me handwritten statements sometimes mattered less legally than people thought, but mattered a lot when someone tried to rewrite history later. Tessa scoffed. This is insane. I turned to her. You texted me from Paige's phone on September 28th. Her expression changed by 1 inch. Not enough for most people to see. Enough for me. I said, you wrote, still with mom, love you. Paige was at the lake house that night too, wasn't she? Tessa rolled her eyes. You're actually crazy. June spoke up, louder than I had ever heard her. Tessa, stop. You told me you did it. That was the second crack. Tessa looked at June like she had grown another head. Seriously? June's voice shook, but she didn't fold. I'm done lying for this. Linda said, June, you need to remember who has helped you. June looked at her. I do remember. That's why I kept the voicemail. Something passed across Linda's face then. Fear, maybe. Rage, definitely. The expression of someone realizing the quiet person in the room had been listening the whole time. Gary set the photo down like it was hot. Paige, he said weakly, tell me this isn't true. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny, but because the cowardice was almost artistic. Gary, you don't get to be shocked now. You texted me to not let pride ruin my home after Linda told you exactly what was happening. He stared at his plate. Did you know about Evan? I asked. Gary's mouth opened. Linda answered for him. He knew Paige was struggling. That wasn't the question. Gary said nothing. There it was. The quiet kind of guilt. Paige started crying then. Maybe it was real. Maybe it wasn't. I couldn't tell anymore, and that was one of the saddest parts. She put one hand over her mouth and shook her head as if the evidence had hurt her feelings by existing. Dylan, she said, I was lonely. The old me would have reacted to that sentence. The old me would have asked why, how long, what I did wrong, whether we could fix it if I listened better, worked less, cooked more, laughed at her jokes faster. The new me just heard an opening argument. You had a lot of chances to tell me you were lonely, I said. You chose logistics. She flinched. I didn't know how to say it without you turning it into another investigation. That's convenient, considering the investigation started after the lies. I made a mistake. No. You built a schedule. Linda stepped closer to Paige like a lawyer approaching a client. Couples recover from issues like this every day. I looked around the table. At Gary pretending his silence was neutrality. At Marcy crying into a napkin over a house she had helped sanitize. At Tessa glaring because cruelty was easier than shame. At Linda, still trying to manage the room with words like grace and healing and family. Maybe, I said. But couples don't recover from a committee. Nobody had an answer for that. I put the copies back in the folder. My hands were steadier than I expected, or maybe I was too numb to shake. Paige reached for my sleeve. Please don't leave like this. I looked down at her hand until she let go. There isn't a better version. I picked up my coat from the chair. My phone buzzed on the table, probably from someone in the family chat realizing the house was too quiet. I didn't check it. As I walked toward the foyer, Marcy said, "Dylan, wait." I stopped. She looked smaller than she had all evening. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask what part. The lake house. The wine glasses she had apparently cleaned after Paige used the place with Evan? The way she had smiled at me every holiday while knowing my marriage was being stored at her property like extra folding chairs? Instead, I said, "You should be." Then I left before dessert. Outside, the cold hit me hard. My coat was only half zipped, and the porch light made the wet pavement shine. Behind me, through the front window, I could see people standing around the dining room table like the meal had been interrupted by a storm. My phone started buzzing nonstop before I reached the car. "Paige, you didn't even let me explain." "Paige, my family is furious." "Paige, you ruined Thanksgiving." "Paige, please come home." "Paige, we can fix this." "Paige, I love you." I drove to a hotel off the highway. It was the kind with thin towels, beige walls, and a breakfast area that smelled faintly of syrup even at night. The woman at the front desk asked if I wanted one key or two. I said one, and for some reason, that almost broke me. In the room, I sat on the edge of the bed without turning on the TV. I could hear trucks passing on the interstate. My reflection in the dark window looked older than 36. It was the loneliest night of my life, and somehow the first peaceful one I had experienced in months. The next morning, I ate half a waffle from the lobby machine because my body apparently still believed in routine. Then I called Mira. She didn't sound surprised. "Did you threaten anyone?" "No." "Did you post anything?" "No." "Did anyone touch you?" "No." "Good. Now we move carefully." That day, I froze our joint credit card, copied financial records, changed passwords Paige had no reason to access anymore, and moved half the money from our joint checking into a separate account exactly the way Mira advised. Not more. Not less. I wasn't trying to punish Paige financially. I was trying to stop being the only person in the room playing by rules nobody else respected. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Paige tried to spin the story first. She told mutual friends I had ambushed her family with edited audio. Linda told relatives I had manipulated June because I was obsessed with proving a narrative. Tessa posted an online update saying that some selfish people ruin holidays when they stop being the center of attention. I didn't respond publicly. Myra's instruction was simple. Let people create exhibits. So I saved screenshots. Then June posted one sentence in the family group chat. I lied because Linda pressured me, and Dylan told the truth. She left the chat immediately after. That changed things. Not completely. People who want to lie badly enough do not surrender just because the truth arrives with a timestamp. But the family got quieter. Tessa deleted her update. Marcy stopped sending Paige heart emojis in the chat, or at least in the screenshots people forwarded me before I asked them to stop. Gary called me 2 weeks later, and I let it go to voicemail. His message was mostly breathing. Then he said, "I should have said something. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. But it was something." Marcy mailed me a check for the money I had spent fixing her garbage disposal 2 summers earlier. There was no note, just the check and a greeting card with a watercolor pumpkin on it. It was weird and unnecessary, but also exactly the kind of guilt payment people make when they cannot say the sentence that matters. Linda never apologized. She sent one email through Paige saying I had chosen punishment over healing. Mira laughed when I showed it to her. "Save that," she said. "People love creating exhibits." As for Paige, the divorce was not clean, but it was cleaner than our marriage had become. At first, she tried hard to reconcile. She sent long texts at midnight. She left a voicemail crying so hard I could barely understand her. She dropped off a paper bag with my favorite coffee and a note that said she missed us. The problem was that I missed us too, but not the version she was offering. I missed the version that had existed before I knew she could turn our life into a logistics problem. When crying didn't work, she got angry. "You're enjoying this," she said during one phone call. I was standing in the townhouse kitchen, looking at the sink that had started draining slowly again. "No," I said. "I'm surviving it." You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You had an inappropriate relationship in front of half of them. She went quiet. Then she said, in a smaller voice, I didn't think you would actually leave. That was the closest she ever came to telling the truth about our marriage. Evan disappeared from her life almost immediately after the Thanksgiving disaster. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he transferred to another department and told people Paige had misread the seriousness of their relationship. That part should have felt satisfying. It mostly felt pathetic. We sold the townhouse in the spring. Paige wanted to keep the couch. I let her. I never liked it anyway. It had one cushion that swallowed quarters and dignity. I took the dining table, my tools, half the Christmas decorations by accident, and the ugly blue mug I always used for coffee because no one else wanted it. The last day in the house, I stood in the empty garage looking at the square marks on the floor where boxes had been. The treadmill was gone. The old paint cans were gone. The walls echoed in that hollow way rooms do after your life has been lifted out of them. Paige came by to pick up one final box. She looked tired. Not tragic, just tired. For a second, I saw the woman I had married. The one who danced in socks while making pancakes. The one who cried when our first Christmas tree fell over because she thought it was an omen, then laughed so hard she got hiccups. The one I had trusted with the boring, precious parts of my life. I'm sorry, she said. I believed that she was sorry in that moment. I just didn't believe she was sorry before consequences arrived. I know, I said. She waited like there should be more. There wasn't. June and I are not close, exactly, but we exchange texts on holidays now. She moved into another apartment without Linda's help. She got a better job at a vet clinic outside Easton and sent me a picture of herself holding a bulldog with a pink cast. Last Christmas, she sent me a photo of a tiny tree in her living room and wrote, "No fake alibis under this one." I laughed for the first time in weeks. People ask me if I regret exposing everything at Thanksgiving. The answer is no. Do I wish I had found out in a quieter way? Sure. I wish Paige had sat me down at our kitchen table and told me the truth before her family turned my marriage into a group project. I wish Linda had cared more about her daughter becoming honest than looking innocent. I wish Gary had understood that keeping the peace is just lying with better branding. I wish Marcy had locked the lake house and Tessa had found a hobby that didn't involve kicking people when they were already confused. But I don't regret standing up. For months, they made me feel unreasonable for noticing reality. They used politeness, family pressure, and Thanksgiving tradition like duct tape over a cracked window. That day, I didn't destroy the family. I opened the window. And when I walked out of Aunt Marcy's house into the cold with my coat half-zipped and my phone buzzing nonstop, I understood something almost simple enough to sound stupid. I didn't need them to admit what they did for it to be true. I didn't need Paige to choose honesty for me to choose peace. And I didn't need a seat at a table where everyone knew the food was warm and the lies were warmer. By the next Thanksgiving, I ate dinner at my brother's place in Lancaster. He and his wife had a smaller house, louder kids, and absolutely no interest in turning gratitude into a courtroom trap. The turkey was a little dry. The football was bad. My niece sprayed whipped cream straight into her mouth from the can and then tried to blame the dog. No speeches. No staged apologies. No one tapping a glass like they were about to manage a scandal. Just dinner. Just a chair pulled out for me because I was wanted there, not because someone needed an audience. That was enough. Actually, it was more than enough. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.